Good evening. It's after 4 o'clock this evening. We've quit working the sawmill for the day. We've been working. We was hoping to get to mow hay today, and it didn't happen. So I wanted to give a little tour of my buildings to IP Farms, and I guess this is just as good a place to do it as any. There's a lot of stuff stored in these barns, and to give you a little idea of how it works, this channel iron right here that is the basic structure that goes from up there down to that concrete. It's only 6 foot tall, so here at the edge of the building, and I'll try to get this turned around and I'll probably mess it up. Here at the edge of the building, when you're walking on the ground, you can hit your head on that truss. And these have been cleaned out since we grew birds in them. They got worse. When we had chickens in them, a lot of the time it wasn't too uncommon for there to be a foot of litter in them before we clean them out. And so you couldn't walk over along the edge. It's too short to walk over along the edge. So if you was going to build a building like this for a shop, you'd build it with at least 8 foot, probably 10 foot tall sidewalls instead of 6. We have put metal on the side of them, left an 8-inch gap. That's one piece of 3 foot barn roofing metal, ribbed metal, with extra lumber in it. We took the curtains loose from 2 buildings and 3/4 of one. And last building that's just going to be hay barn still has all the curtain on it that's on it. I built these buildings in 1995, and I grew chickens for one company for 10 years, almost to the day, and then they quit me. And to give you guys an idea what these cost, back in 1995, it was for the buildings alone. This doesn't include any of the equipment or the electrical, none of what had to go into them. Just for the shell, cost $48,000 a piece. And they are 40 by 400. Now, I've got a project I'm going to put in this one, and it's probably going to go all the way down here to where the front of that tractor is. And it's going to be 12 foot over this away from the wall, maybe a little more, but probably 12 foot. And I'm going to make a cow pen out of portable panels so I can put a bunch of my smaller heifer calves when I wean them in the barn and keep them in the barn all winter. I've got plans to do that. I'm going to make a 10-foot door or 10-foot opening down here with a corral panel over it. And I'm going to clean all this stuff out of here on that side. And most of the stuff that's on this side is going to go somewhere else. These tractors that's right here are all going to be moved, and I'm going to fix it up so that I can store square-baled hay on that side of the runway. And of course, you know, I got my stock trailer way down there, but I got room enough in the other building for all the equipment that I'll have to move, and I'll still have room for some hay in that shop building. So that's a project I've got fixing to go on up here. But I wanted to show you that these buildings are not all they're cracked up to be. They used pine 2x4s on edge for the roof, and then to nail the roof down to. And yes, they're nailed down instead of screwed, but that was just the way they did things back then. And they also put 1.5 inches of styrofoam insulation underneath of the metal, and then just nailed down through it, and that's what holds the insulation in, which is a real cheap way of doing it. And you're going to look at this building, and I have messed up the end of a couple of these. The sawmill building's kind of beat up, and this one's kind of beat up. It's been kicked off right there and right here. And I backed into this building putting hay in it with my pickup and the bale on the bed of my pickup instead of just sliding the one ahead of it up, rolled up over it, and it took the header out. And the doors slapped my truck and everything when I came in. But I wanted to show you over here in this building, there's these buildings leak all over really bad, and every place that you can see discoloration on the 2x4s up is a leak. And I was really thinking that this building it has a spot or two in it. I've had trouble with termites in these buildings. This one may be the one that doesn't have them as bad as the rest of them. There's a tore up spot. This is the one that still has the curtains on it. Yeah. This building here has a little more foundation showing, so the termites didn't get into it as bad. But the other buildings have, all three of them, have some spots where the termites has eaten these boards completely up. And I'm probably not ever going to replace them. I'm really kind of surprised that these have lasted as good as they have. Think about it, that's 1995 they were built, which is 26 years ago. So, and they've done all right. They're nothing great to brag about. So you'll know some of the specs on them. That's a 11-foot opening where the door is. I had a walk door like that at both ends, and two across from each other, one on each side of it at the middle. The steel trusses are on 10-foot centers. I don't know how tall it is to the center of them, but they actually gave us a snow load rating whenever we built them. And the bank that I dealt with told me it had to be X amount or I wouldn't be able to get insurance on them. But getting insurance on them as chicken houses was never a problem, but you didn't get to use the same company more than a couple years, and then they'd quit insuring them and somebody else would pick them up. And I have very little insurance on them now. Matter of fact, if I had enough insurance that if all four of them got collapsed, I would imagine I wouldn't be able to build me back a 40 by 60 shop. But there's not a section of it that doesn't have multiple leaks. The black spots is where I've gotten oil on it from the chain oiler on my firewood saw. But they look pretty clean. That's because we washed them. We were expecting to get new chickens again whenever the last ones that we had went out. And the way that works is you wash them before you haul out the litter that's in the floor, because that way your floor stays dry. And we have problems like this all over in these buildings. I have some words of advice. Somebody's going to build a building like this and use it for the purposes that we're using these for. It might be years and miles ahead to screw the metal down right to the wood and have somebody spray foam it from the bottom if you need insulation. I just think that'd be a better deal. Plus the mice don't mess with that spray foam. These buildings have mice and rats in them that live in the insulation and in the voids and the ends and stuff. You're probably wondering, did these buildings pay out? And when we started, growing chickens was a lot different than it is now. For the 64,000 square feet that I have under a roof, growing chickens, and it was just about an everyday job. We would get a couple weeks off between flocks, and that gave us enough time we could actually get cleaned up from one bunch and be ready for another one in about 2 days. So that wasn't never any big deal. One time a year was all they recommended you clean out, and nowadays I don't think they want you to clean them out at all. But that was part of why I wanted them, so I could get the litter. When I built these, I got built up to where I had about 500 acres of ground and about 500 acres leased. And I was working with my dad, and so he had quite a little bit of that same kind of stuff going on. And we traded off help at the chicken farms when he was cleaning out or had trouble and stuff like that. And so it worked out real well. But these buildings grossed for me as a chicken farm about $100,000 to $120,000 a year. And it was real good to start with because propane cost 48 cents a gallon if you bought a whole bobtail load when I started. And the last year that I grew chickens, it cost us just a little over $2 a gallon. And so that kind of dips into the profits pretty bad. But it was a venture that I would not go into again, but it was a venture that I gained a lot of knowledge, and it probably did as much for the rest of my farming as anything ever has. So it's just a little bit about my buildings. Yeah, these are 40 wide by 400 feet long. When we started new baby chicks, we had a way we could curtain them off to where they only had to be in the middle 200 feet, and each building would house on meat chickens. We was growing about 22,000, 23,000 per building. Sometimes we would get 25. We'd have 100,000 chickens on the place, and it took them 39 to 41 days to grow them from baby chicks to 4 pounds, and we would do that 7 times a year. And so we was making a lot of chicken, but I was at the time when I built this farm, it was a larger one of their contract setups, and in the 10 years that I grew for them, it became one of their smaller contract farm setups, and most of their contract farms was 6 and 10 houses, and one guy could take care of them if he didn't have anything else to do, and you'd have to hire all your cleaning out and stuff done, but we always did all that ourselves, and so it was very interesting. And now I've wound up with these buildings. My dad, actually, his farm 2 miles over from mine is still growing chickens. The straw that broke the camel's back on the growing chickens was they wanted me to update these buildings that were only 10 years old to make them more easier for the company to deal with, and it looked like it was more environmentally friendly. What they did was they insulated them better, and they put solid sidewalls on them, and they had 8 big exhaust fans at one end and drew all their air in from the other end, and that way they could draw their air through a web work that they would wet down with water pretty constantly in the summertime, and it worked like a swamp cooler. And I guess that's okay, but they also did away with all the help Mother Nature would give them. And we got along all right once we figured out how to do it, but everything was kind of tight-lipped, and any of the people that might help you out, if they was from the company, they wasn't going to help you out, and if they was somebody else, they could be competing against you, and so they really didn't have a reason to help you out. And so we had to figure out a lot of that stuff ourselves, but we made it through all that. My dad sold his farm when Simmons went to push us out or get us to update. And the update, the thing that burned me the most about it was they put computer controllers on everything, and you had to hook up the internet, was the way they explained it to me, and that would make it so they could change your settings in your buildings without ever actually having to be here. And I already had problems with them doing that for me. They would mess with things, but anyway, I got no real qualms with them, except I think they lost a lot of good growers because they made these policies, and then they just left us hanging. And anybody that had borrowed money to build a chicken farm, you borrow it on your name, and they give you a contract, and the contract is not as long of a period as what it takes to pay the buildings off. And it's still that way today. I don't know how they get anybody to do this, but there's still people out there that are building buildings. There's a set of buildings that's only about 3 years old on the section 1 mile over from me here. And but anyway, it is what it is. These have made really good hay storage. I made the comment to my dad once when we was sweating half to death working over here. My buildings may have been at his. I just looked at him and said, I'm looking forward to the day when I'll store hay in my chicken buildings. And he said, be careful what you wish for. And it wasn't very many years later I was storing hay in these. And I can put, we make 5 foot by 5 foot round bales. I can put almost 400 of them in each building. and never have to put one on top of another one. But I've got to where I don't do that. I don't usually feed 150 to 200 bales a year, and then I sell quite a bit. And so I'll fill this barn up to about where my trailer is there, and that'll hold 300 bales, and then I might get 80 or 100 put in another building, just kind of a little backup. And the past couple years, not as many people putting up hay, and it's harder to get ground, so it's making hay more valuable. And so that's kind of a little story about the buildings. And there's my firewood pile. I got I kind of got my attachment row here. That's what I load my firewood with. Got a little tree shear, precision tree shear. That's the Halverson. Got a Jetco post driver on a skid steer, quick attach, pair of forks, spear, post auger, another spear, a bucket. And there's a bucket on there right now. And then my hay sweep and my hay grapple. Only thing that's missing is the other bobcat and the spear that goes on it. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll catch up with y'all later. And that would have been a perfect place to put a shout out to IP Farms. He's over on the east side of our country, and trying to reclaim some of his grandparents' farm or his parents' farm. And so sneak over there and check him out. IP Farms. Got a big IH symbol on his sticker and his logo out there, so check him out. He was the one interested in my buildings. He goes to drooling over them every time, and I'm like, it's not that much to drool over. Just some old barns, but I guess if you don't have an old barn, mine might look like they're pretty good. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to y'all later.